Hi, this is the orderIT trade activity review for November the 24th, 2020. We've had 8 trades on that day. 5 were identified as buy trades and 3 were identified as short trades. Going to go through to evaluate the possibility of each trade. First trade is CREG, China Recycling Energy Corporation. It tripped at 1132.21 at a price of 518. It was a buy trade. It closed the day at 545. It was actually down quite a bit, down 12%, but obviously it tripped, and you could see it tripped and basically stayed stable. It did come down late afternoon, but stayed stable. So that technically is a positive on a down market trade. We'll see the indicators show anything differently. OBV somewhat sideways, and then late afternoon it's showing it recovering a good amount. MACD bouncing back and forth, but you can see afternoon it recovered. Excuse me. Recovered in the aspect that it was moving positive. DI actually showing it bouncing back and forth. It was more positive than negative, so it somewhat was showing also positive. So the 3 main indicators showing somewhat positive, and you can see Bollinger Band again showing somewhat a bouncing back and forth, but at the end of the day it did recover. Next trade is AA, Alcoa Corporation. It tripped at 1145.19 at a price of 20.65, also identified as a buy. It closed at 20.82. It was actually up a good amount, 5.10%. You can see it did drop early morning, so it did come down, but it did close the day above the tripping price, so I consider that a positive trade. We'll check the indications. OBV is actually showing it moving morning sideways, and then afternoon it was actually moving down a little bit sideways in late afternoon, but moving down. MACD showed that it did have a positive activity in the morning, but basically moving sideways for the most part of the day. DI actually showing actually early morning it was negative, but it was positive mid to late morning. Bouncing back and forth. It ended the day up a little bit. Bollinger Band showing somewhat of a steady increase morning, and then afternoon somewhat moving sideways. It though ended the day positive, so that's a positive trade. Next trade is COG, Cabot Oil and Gas Corporation. It tripped at 1151.32 at a price of 17.67. It was actually tripped as a short sell. It closed at 1803, and it was actually up 2.27% for the day. So we'll see if there's any point in time during the day after a trip that it came down. It tripped right around this time, 1150 something. Let's see, 1767. So not there, but looks like mid-afternoon. There was one point in the mid-afternoon it did come down, but that's only a short period of time. It did come down, but it did not show any strong negative movement below the tripping price, so we'll have a look-see. OBV is actually showing that it recovered and then was moving up in the late afternoon. MACD actually showing positive. It did trip late afternoon, but you can see the majority of the day it was actually up. DI is showing somewhat bouncing back and forth. It did though end the day up, and Bollinger Band actually showed in. I was going to mark this as a possible, but indicators showing that this stock was in general just somewhat moving positive in general, so it would have not ended the positive, the day positive for a trade, so I'll mark that as a negative trade. Next trade is CMA, Comerica, I think that's the way you pronounce it, Comerica Incorporated. Tripped at 12:05.05 at a price of 54.49. It was tripped as a buy trade. It closed the day at 54.59, so it was up, and up 5.08%, so it was up a good amount. We'll check to see if the indicators are showing moving in that direction also. OBV, it did recover at the end of the day, but for the most part the day itself was moving sideways. MACD showing moving positive at the beginning and the end of day, and then bouncing back and forth. DI showing somewhat more positive and negative, so not much there. Bollinger Band, but it was showing that it was moving steadily upwards price-wise. It was moving up, but not strong upwards, but then it ended the day positive, so that's a positive result. Next trade would be BND. That's Vanguard Total Bond Market Index Fund ETF shares. Tripped at 12.20.32 at a price of 80.22. It was tripped as a short sell, and it actually closed at 88.22, so it actually closed at tripping price. It was down though for the day, and we can see that 12.20, so it tripped right around this point, and you can see it came down to 88.21 there, 81.23. Anyway, this one was definitely down multiple times after the tripping price, so this was another positive trade. It would have had to been monitored to catch it during the slow period. It did end the day up at the trading point, but it was down, so we'll accept that as a positive trade. Next trade is FSLR, First Solar Incorporated. It tripped at 237.36 at a price of 89.97. It was tripped as a buy trade. It was closing at 90.41, up 4.02%, so that's above the actual tripping price. It actually is down a good amount this morning, so you would have had to get out, obviously, the day before. This is actually a good example of the aspects of day trading that you really have to trade during that day, because you don't know what the next day is going to result in. This one here is showing you that this stock is taking a heavy, negative direction in the pre-market. So, you know, it would have meant that if you did wait till next day, that you would have started the day with it down. So the stock itself would have had to be traded during that trade day. OBV, you can see it rised a little bit in the afternoon, which is where it tripped. Actually tripped around this area, but it was somewhat moving a little bit upwards OBV wise. MACD again showing you it was moving somewhat upwards early afternoon, and then came down. It did recover at the end of the day, so it was recovering MACD wise at the end of the day, but mid-afternoon it was moving down. Interestingly, it was moving very heavily negative on DI. DI showing both late afternoon and mid-afternoon, it was actually moving very heavily negative, so that's an interesting point. It did trip and then maintain its value. It did maintain its value, so it tripped and kept that value, but you can see it was, technically it was moving down. The stock was up, but you can see Bollinger Band wise, it was somewhat moving downwards during the whole day, so that's the whole reason why this was a tricky trade, and you would have had to gotten out obviously during that trade. So valid during the day, positive for it. Next trade is JKS, Jinko Solar Holdings Company. Tripped at 255.01 at a price of 68.06. It was a buy trade. It closed the day at 67.04. It actually was down for the day, and you can see it was actually down early morning too, so this stock would have required it coming up. It did trip at 255, so it tripped around this area, but you can see it never recovered. It never recovered at all. So it tripped, but never moved above its tripping price. We'll check to see what the indicators are showing. Indicators, OBV showing that it was moving upwards at the afternoon time. MACD afternoon, it was also showing it did make a little bit of a negative in late afternoon somewhat, but end of the day it was up again. So DI showing it actually negative in the morning and somewhat positive in the afternoon. It did end the day up, and you can see the Bollinger Band is showing that it was from the beginning of the afternoon till the afternoon, it was somewhat moving upwards. The fact that it's down this morning, that's a question mark, but it actually may recover during open, so this may be just a question mark because it looks like the stock was technically moving up by the end of the day. It just somehow is not recovering completely. I'll mark that as a possible. I can't mark it as a positive because there's no indication that it was moving strongly, and early morning is not showing it moving strongly either. So I can't even ponder it being a positive trade. Next trade is KGC, Kinross Gold Corporation. It tripped at 350 at a price of $6.98. It tripped as a short sell. It closed at $6.98, so it actually closed at tripping price, and you can see it was down 2.24%. But you can see though it's making a recovery early morning. So it's the aspect of making sure you can actually get out at the time. So 350, this would have been a very interesting one. No, I can't say that would have been a positive because it just showed at 350, and I don't see that one is actually not the right one. Maybe it picked up on the stock afterwards. 1550. Okay, so it was this one. You say early afternoon it actually was moving upwards, but you can see by late afternoon it was moving downwards. MACD is also showing it moving downwards. DI again also showing it moving downwards, making a bit of recovery. Bollinger Band showing it downwards end of the day. So this one definitely was a possible trade, but not complete. So the end of the day is we have a potential of 5 trades out of 8 trades that were positive, so 62.5% positive trade. Not high, but again, still about 50%. And as you can see, we had a couple of trades that were possible, but you know, it's a question mark. They were both moving fairly positive in the direction that they were moving. It just happens to be you would have to catch them the day after to finalize the trade, but completeness-wise, 62.5%. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.